This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Well, today we're going to talk about hyperinflation. We're going to talk about possibly a crashing dollar, how to protect yourself, basically the things you can do to prepare against that, why we think things might be getting bad. And, you know, I feel like it's been a long time coming. Me and Kevin were just discussing, and you know, he's like, oh, you know, Trump and whatever. And I feel like decisions have been taking us down this direction for a little while, that we've been getting a little out of control with our spending and things. But believe me, Trump has done nothing to cut down on spending or actually on what spending. Yeah, it's bad. Things are getting a little rough out there. Apparently, our Federal Reserve right now, I think we're at about, they're saying officially 3% inflation a year, and that they dream of 2%. Imagine losing 2 cents on the dollar every year as being the dream, the goal we could get to. You know, just a little bit of your savings. And I mean, think of how hard people work to get, you know, 2% or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, I feel like hyperinflation. I think one of the things that bring it on, and I feel like I get more upset about it every day, is silver just keeps going up and up. And I actually have a decent amount of silver, and I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I'm like, wait, what does that mean? When my silver is worth something, that means that the dollar isn't.
I don't think the value of silver is necessarily going up. I think it's
falling.
Yeah, exactly.
Silver is like somewhere around, I don't know, it's between $88 and $93 somewhere in the last 2 days. It's hit those two numbers up and down quite a bit. So just something to keep an eye on. But again, it's the dollar kind of going away, not because silver is awesome, although silver is awesome. But maybe it's not that awesome at 90 something a coin, because it's a little late. Kind of missed that boat, but we'll talk about it. Kevin, tell me about why is the economy going wrong? What's your big concern? What do you think's happening?
Well, I mean,
it's all the orange-haired guy.
Well, I mean, anybody that cuts their income and increases their spending is not going to have a good time, right?
I think that's a true statement.
That's basic. I'm going to go work part-time and I'm just going to live off my credit cards. It's fucking genius move, bro.
That is not an unreasonable statement. That's what I would say.
So the leading economic index shows slowing activity in early 2026, with GDP growth expected to weaken. Unemployment rate has risen, signaling a potential recession. Sticky inflation is what they're calling the inflation we have now. Persisting inflation is impacting consumer spending. So people are spending less because they have less. Things cost more, right?
Right.
So things aren't like looking great going forward. So what can we do? What can we do to get ready for whatever's coming?
Oh, Well, there is a lot of things. So, I mean, you guys remember the Weimar Republic, right? People talk about that when they talk about ridiculous inflation.
Right, right, because that was out of control, right? That was
Yeah,
mhm,
I think they said in 1918, the mark, which is, think of it like a dollar, it was 4.2 to a dollar.
yeah.
And then in 1923, it was 4.2 trillion marks to a dollar. So I don't even know like why you would be counting it at that point.
Right.
Like that's just stupid. Like it just it became worthless.
Yeah.
Like that's saying, oh yeah, this $1 bill is worth 4 trillion. What
Mhm.
you're
When
not
you
even
start coming out with trillion-dollar bills, then it's time it's a wrap, dude. It's time to
you've
start
lost
over.
it. Yeah, you need a new dollar. You need a new thing, right? So don't even they were actually paying people twice a day because the value of money in the morning wasn't the same as the value of money in the afternoon.
They were the factory workers were having their wives come to the factory to pick up their check midday so that they could spend it before it was worthless.
They say that people had like wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread. I find that impossible to believe because there's not that much printed money out there. But
Mhm.
then again, we
You
got
just
those
have to keep
printing
running it.
presses going.
Yeah, you just keep printing more.
Basically you turn to like a barter system at that point. And that's, because that would just be ridiculous. There's only so much paper and why even bother printing it? But I will say that's the time to pay off your mortgage and pay taxes. Like
Mhm.
I got you, just
Yep.
take it in, right?
Pay
So
off your credit card debt, you know what I mean? Because that the thing is, the only way that it benefits people is that when the value of money goes down, your debt goes down, right?
right,
The value
right.
of your debt. So,
And that is true.
uh,
That usually happens because your
mhm,
mortgage is in US dollars or whatever. I mean, that's a real thing. Like people are like, oh, it goes up. The problem is people have credit cards and stuff at the same time, people who are in bad situations. And if
mhm,
you have credit cards, your interest rate is going way up. So if you don't have the ability to pay that off very quickly,
right,
then that interest rate will end up,
mhm,
eating you alive. But it's also, it doesn't matter if you can't buy anything new. You know what I'm saying?
right,
And nobody else can afford to buy your property or, that kind of thing. Cause, just because the dollar is worthless doesn't mean you have $1 trillion.
right,
You still just have one. So you're like, oh, well, I have $5,000. And if it collapses, I'll be able to pay off. Well, no, because your 5,000 is now not worth anything
right,
and nobody can
exactly.
buy your stuff. That's so what held like in the 1930s when the US had the Great Depression or right after World War One with the Weimar Republic, what worked? So owning land, that worked, right?
Mhm,
Having hard assets like buildings, properties. People rented rooms to boarders. That was a big thing, like renting out space. And again, and this would be for like a barter thing, usually not for dollars, right?
mhm.
Um, having
You
precious metals, having skills. Remember, you always see like in the 30s, you always had the women doing like the wash, or they would do like sewing, mending.
mhm,
Obviously, people are into mending things. One, if new products aren't coming in because there's no money, but two, you need to make things last. So having skills to make things work. Now, I don't know that, I feel like people have a lot more clothes now, probably a little less durable than they used to be. Um, but I would say the key things are going to be like, do you know how to get food? So we're talking about farming, hunting, right?
mhm,
Because if you have extra food, especially you have chickens, you have whatever, you're growing extra vegetables, that kind of stuff, that's going to be real value. Maybe fishing finally takes a turn and becomes a valuable skill.
mhm.
I know that might be like a shot right there. I don't know. Um, I don't know. Cutting firewood. Turns out people need to stay warm and paying for oil and propane, a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
But if
It's
you were
going
the
up,
guy
right?
who could set somebody up with a wood stove or had the ability to get a lot of firewood, know how
Mhm.
to do that kind of stuff safely, that might be a skill that you could really, work out. Diversification. So like having multiple streams, I guess, is a big thing. Multiple streams of income. That way, if something falls apart, you have kind of more going on.
Mhm.
People who actually invested and had foreign currency access, that was a big thing.
Right.
So, but then that's, that diversity, right? But also having silver, having gold, those are diverse, those are outside of the norm stockpile. Now having stuff, it just depends what kind of stuff. I guess it comes down to useful stuff to
Right.
sell. Like if you're like, oh, well, I have the 1962, whatever car that's worth $150,000, that's cool, but nobody's going to give you $150,000 for a classic car
Right.
in
When everybody's poor.
when everybody's
Yeah.
poor, right? I'm not saying they won't
Exactly.
today. Today they might, but they're not when it's all falling apart. And that's where you got to think. Like it's practical things. Now, I will go the flip side of that. That's the time to buy all those things.
Mhm. Right.
That's the time to acquire buildings and land and assets. And if you're in a position to do that because you saved silver, maybe you were a silver stacker, then that would be pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
People, they talk about, you hear stories of people like trading the deed of their house for, something to eat kind of thing, because it's, you don't know. That's the time to buy, right? When,
Mhm.
when people are desperate, take advantage of others, Kevin. That's the good moral that we could all take away. That's
Right.
probably not the good moral. You actually want to be able to help out other people. But
Oh.
I'm just saying
Oh.
that would be the time. That would be the time, Kevin, to do it. So what didn't work, right? Those were the things that worked. But what didn't work was having like a savings account.
Mhm.
That
Right.
money just gone into
Gone.
nothing. Having a pension, you're like, oh, Chuck, I have 150 or $200,000 in my 401k. Yeah, that might not work out so well.
Mhm.
Um, Having a fixed income. Uh, if you're getting that check from the government every month, I know you're thinking, well, Chuck, if inflation goes up, they're going to adjust it and they're going to give me more money.
Yeah.
That might not be something to count on. That could actually be something that could fall apart. Um, Trusting the government, that's actually one of the things that failed for people. Uh,
Yeah.
you don't want to count on a government program or something. I'm not saying there won't be government programs that can actually help people. I'm saying you don't want to rely on or be dependent on government programs to help
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. All those old ladies collecting Social Security checks, they would be in a bad situation.
They would be in a bad situation. Paper wealth. So, but physical dollars, but also people have like paper silver,
Mhm.
paper,
Right.
paper gold. So you say, oh, I have so many shares of gold. Well, a lot of that kind of fell apart and it wasn't real. Like
Right.
people were defrauded. And guess what? Sucks to be you is what happened, and that's not cool, but that's what happened. In 1933, Roosevelt had to do, everything was falling apart. We were having, inflation. And he decided to have a bank holiday. And he's like, look, we're just going to close the banks for 3 days. So at first, people are like, oh, I can't get money. And something like that, your ATMs aren't going to work either. That's how
Right.
that's going to be. You're not getting money, right? And then they were like, no, you know what? It's going to be for 9 days. That's how long it ended up lasting. Was 9 days. They had the banks closed. And in that time, they over 5,000 banks ended up shutting their doors and closing,
Like permanently.
never reopened at all. And anybody who had their money didn't have any left, right? It was gone. Now you're saying, well, Chuck, I don't have to worry because we have the FDIC. Now, that's that insurance program that protects your money in the bank to make you feel good about the banking system.
Right. Up to
This is another
$250,000
It is
until
250. That is
right
correct.
until wealthy people's bank collapses, then they'll reimburse you for everything.
Now, exactly. And then have you seen that they changed the law a little while back, and it's your bank has that money and like it's on their ledger, not really yours. And the thing is, if the bank defaults, they have to pay their creditors before they pay you,
Right.
with your money. And so just keep that in mind. But anyway, but you're saying, well, Chuck, the FDIC is going to make sure I get mine. And that's true. However, one, it turns out if you have a joint account with your wife in your bank, it's still just 250,000. It's not double. I looked into that. That's not, it's not, it doesn't go up.
Right.
Obviously, because, I'm always worried about the 250,000 I'm leaving in there. And I'm like, is it really enough? I might be over this week.
Yeah.
That's not really true. I was
not really a problem.
No, it's
with
not
having
really.
having a $250,000 just laying around and
laying around untouched. Yeah. But it turns out the FDIC only has 2% of the money to cover total deposits.
Right.
So if you had a big crash, 2% isn't really going to go, especially if the banks are worried about paying their creditors first. It's not really going to help you. So that would just be something to keep in mind. Now, one of the cool things that when you look back at history, you realize is people in the 30s during the Depression, they would pool their money together and find other ways to work as a community. And a lot of it was the immigrant communities. They would be very tight knit. You ever notice people always talk about all the foreigners have the 7-Elevens or the, whatever in a community or, all the whatever group you want to, the Italians, the Jewish people, the whatever, all command a certain little industry in their community, and they all have the small businesses. Well, a lot of that was that mindset of they would kind of work together as a community and pool their money. So imagine in the 30s, each family would give $5 a week to the community fund. And then once a month, they would kind of get together and vote what to do with the money. And they would give it to a family to start a business or, give it to, to send Johnny off to doctor school or whatever it would be. They would, work together and save up because it turns out there is power in numbers. You're able to, build on that. So that's something to think about. It's kind of cool. But working together as a community, but it's also kind of how you got things like the mafia and things like that. They'd protect the community, but you'd guilt the people who aren't contributing. And then, things can go bad, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but in a way, I mean, some of those things really did help the communities, even if there was a little shadiness going on in there as well. I mean, who didn't love Tony Soprano, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah. The Westies. I mean, there's all sorts of, Russian mafia. There's all sorts of, crime syndicates that are from immigrant populations. But in a lot of ways, those communities helped the people in their communities as well as harming them.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any more kind of things you could do to kind of basically get by in a tough situation like this where the dollar or the economy kind of falls out, or did I just nail it?
I think, you touched on one that I wanted to talk about a little bit more, stocking essentials. We talked about, silver and gold and things like that. But also
you can't eat silver and gold.
Right, exactly. Also things that, that can get you food or things that are food. Nobody wants to eat canned food every day for the rest of their lives, but it's better than not eating anything for the rest of your life.
There you go.
Doesn't quite last as long, right?
I argue that. A bowl of rice sounds better than no bowl of rice.
Right. Right. Another thing is, survival skills, right? And you touched on that as far as hunting and fishing. I think that those types of things are overlooked. How much food you can grow in, 20 square feet in your backyard. It can be quite a lot, especially if you focus on carrots. They say that's the biggest ounce of food per acreage,
Carrots?
Carrots. Yeah.
Really? I did not know that.
Biggest volume of food, per square foot.
I can never grow carrots. They always end up like little balls of orange.
You gotta dig way down deep and break that soil up all the way down. Yeah. Cause I did the same thing. I had like a good 8 inches of good soil, and my carrots grew down and hit the rock underneath and just, they were stubby.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep that in mind. Carrots. Carrots are the key. I like that.
Another thing to focus on would be securing energy and tools. So that would be, the tools to make sure your car keeps working. When you're having car issues, when you're having a leaking roof, when you're having broken windows, how to fix things like that instead of just freezing your ass off because your window's broken. Right. Solar panels. A lot of people have backup generators, which are great, but make sure you have enough fuel to back it up, because gasoline is at a reasonable price right now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily last forever, right? Yeah. So I mean, one of the things that I think is the most important, though, is focusing on your skill set now. If you have the tools to fix your car, that's great, but do you know how to do it? Do you know?
Yeah, but Kevin, that's what I'm going to learn.
Plugs. Yeah, no, I know. That's not when you want to learn, though, right? Do you know how to grow vegetables? Because you and I both know how not to grow carrots, right? But if we've never planted carrots before,
we wouldn't have known that.
Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of those types of skills are the types of skills that come in very handy when things start getting bad.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. I mean, you have to think about the core things that you need. And that's, I talked about silver and stuff, and yeah, you could be ahead of things by having precious metals. Really, the key is that's the time to buy your precious metals when it all collapses, not when they go really high, right? When nobody has anything, because they're like, oh, silver, what am I going to do with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, I don't know. But that's the thing, is it all kind of starts to spiral. You need to think about what people actually need. You know what's important right now is I need to eat. There's Isaac and Jacob in the Bible, and the one son is like, oh, well, everything's crap and whatever. I'd trade my whole birthright and inheritance for a bowl of soup, because that's really what I want right now. Because people are so desperate and hungry for the immediate, right?
Well, he was starving, and bowl of beans is worth everything if you're gonna die. You know what I mean? What good is the birthright if you're dead?
Having everything, isn't gonna pay off. So that's something to think about. So maybe precious metals, maybe not the answer, but being able to heat your house because you have firewood and you live in Chicago, that might be pretty cool. I don't know about how many fireplaces you got going in Chicago that actually heat a house, but
yeah,
you know what I mean? You got the moral of the story, right?
There's some cold places in this country.
There are some cold places. And so how does that go wrong? Why are we getting into trouble? I think there's actually one day in the U.S. history, I just was reading something about it the other day, that we didn't have national debt. It was for one day, and then they went and had a party about the national debt.
And that knocked it out.
That it went away. So that was, I think, isn't Trump building some party spaces now so that, he can make sure we can celebrate our debt or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
Going on there at the White House a while
Just
back.
keeps going up. Didn't he have like a what was that? The Great Gatsby party?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people were losing their jobs and
It's, you
poor
got to do it.
taste.
Well, there's hyperinflation. That's what happened in the Weimar Republic.
And yeah, a couple other places. That wasn't, Weimar Republic was the most famous one, right? But there's a lot of places. I think Zambia had an issue.
Yep.
But I mean, it's
Venezuela.
not
Venezuela had that issue.
Venezuela, exactly, 100%. And a lot of these countries, they see it coming slowly, but then it seems like it just happens like that. Things are steadily getting worse, and then everything goes down. Everything collapses.
Exactly. So hyperinflation is technically it's 50% inflation in 1 month period.
Mhm.
It is kind of how you meet that definition. And yeah, so in Germany, right? It was basically World War I ended and Germany was crushed by war debt. Turns out when you lose a war and you sign that treaty, a lot of times we used to make people pay back.
Right.
And, like, hey, you destroyed all our crap and you owe us a big bill. And
you had to spend a lot of money on bullets to kill you guys.
Yeah.
And we need to get that money back.
And so they had obligations for reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. And it was politically unstable because, you just had this. Well, you basically didn't have a strong government. And turns out, no, you don't have a strong government when you just got crushed, right? That's not exactly how it works. The industrial stuff is all damaged, right? You're partially occupied by foreign powers. So things were, they said it was like a death spiral, it just kept getting worse and worse. And so the government was like, well, what do we do? And so they had the Reichsbank. That was the go-to. And they created the Reichsbank that was going to just print money based on nothing so they could handle things, right? They could basically do business.
Mhm.
And it ended up bad. They just printed money and it wasn't backed by anything. There was no gold. There was no real value to it. It was just like a symbol. And it was like the trust of the government. You're saying, well, Chuck, yeah, but that would never happen. Right. So it's weird because you go a little bit into the future and in 1913, this is actually a little bit in the past, if I remember right. Wasn't it? Yeah. But before because the Weimar Republic, it all fell apart in 1921, 1923. You go back a little bit. In 1913, over in the US, we were creating the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is a little shaky here because what they did is it was a bunch of bankers, right? Mm-hmm. 6 of them to be exact. And they got together and they said, you know what? It's really hard. If we lend out all kinds of money, we're worried about a bank run. You guys probably saw the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and Mr. Mm-hmm. Potter, and you had, the run on the bank. What if everybody comes and gets their money at the same time? And you kick because my money's in his house and it's in his house and, it's paying for his swings and his new pool and his, whatever. And we all loan it out and share it. Well, they were starting to think about what happens if all at once everybody came and asked for their money. That would be bad. We can't lend it all out. So we need to have some kind of secure, stable system where basically we wouldn't have any competition. We wouldn't have any, problem, and we could control the interest rates so things wouldn't get out of control. And so they said, let's get together and we'll basically make a cartel where all the banks kind of work together and we control everything. And if we made it sound like part of the federal government, that would make it sound good. And even better, if it didn't sound like a bank, if we didn't call it the big bank of government, right?
Right.
If we made it something official and secure and trusted. So they said, wait, let's create the Federal Reserve.
Right.
Now, this actually isn't the federal government. It has nothing to do with the federal government, except they're going to lend money to the government so the government could grow. And this guy who they tapped to write it all up, his name was Paul Warburg. And it turns out, if you ever saw the movie Orphan Annie and Daddy Warbucks, that's actually him that they're talking about. It was always, back to Paul Warburg. Well, he's like, I can help you guys out with this, to his banker friends. He goes, I have a brother, Max Warburg, who created the Reichsbank in Germany, and they're totally working things out over there. And Germany is killing it. We should model what Germany's doing to build this great Weimar Republic and do the same thing in the United States.
Yep.
So it was smart. They were like, all right, let's do it. So they got together, they create the Federal Reserve. Now, the only connection aside of lending the federal government money that they have is, you're saying, well, Chuck, the president gets to pick the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Right.
Well, he does and he doesn't. So he can pick the chairman, so the guy who's in charge, but he can only choose from somebody who's already on the board of the Federal Reserve. Now you're saying, well, Chuck, that's not exactly true. And you're right. He can choose somebody else and then get the board of the Federal Reserve to vote and put this guy on the board. And then they can make him the chairman.
Right.
But otherwise, he can't just pick somebody. Like, basically, the board of the Federal Reserve gets to choose. You know how they always talk about how, the government seems to be controlled by the skull and bones and that kind of thing. It's kind of like that. You get to pick your president, but you can really only choose from the 5 people that we put up there.
Right, exactly.
That's how the Federal Reserve works. So now the Federal Reserve actually wants things to work out because they want to be in charge and they want things to keep going. But remember, originally it was backed by gold, and then it became, they called it the petrodollar, right? Or it was backed by oil. And they were like, all right, we can go off the gold standard, but we'll make this deal with Saudi Arabia, and then we're going to be backed by oil and everything's going to be okay. Well, when they did that, it turns out that kind of expired, that deal with Saudi Arabia. And now it's really backed by nothing. And see, it used to basically, the value of the dollar is now currently backed by the US military. If we don't have might and the threat, or I hate to say it, the promise of just giving people free stuff, then the real dollar has no value. Yeah. Kevin, where do you think our debt's at? Where is it at? Do you know?
It's $38.3 trillion. And it's going up every day, man.
I know. If you look now, like, you're going to listen to this episode tomorrow, probably be like 39 trillion. They actually say by April, we should hit 39 trillion.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We're spending an extra $1 trillion every 6 months. So that's,
So if you want to know about the Federal Reserve, there's this book. I did it as an audio book, and it's 24 hours. So it's a commitment. But it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And it's all about, and it's funny because the guy pitches the book in the beginning, and he's like, I know you're thinking this is a huge, monstrous book, and I can't learn about finance for 24 hours without wanting to shoot myself in the head. And the guy's like, but it's so filled with conspiracy and corruption that you're going to be on the edge of your seat the whole time. I don't know that he really held that. Like, still 24 hours of finance was still, and it's like, oh, this person did this and then this, and you're like, all right. But they do try and tell it as a good story. We actually did a great job, I think. I mean, not to, toot my own horn, I'm just saying, but we tackled the Federal Reserve and dug deep into it on an episode a while back. I'll try and put a link in the show notes here so you guys can find it, or if you just search Survival and Basic Badass Podcast Federal Reserve, you should be able to dig up that episode. But it gets crazy when you realize how corrupt and messed up of a system this is all based on. I mean, it really is a house of cards based on intimidation. But I gotta say, it's worked pretty well. I mean, Kevin, we're, 76, 250 years into this project, and we're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
pretty
and
good on America.
and even though the president doesn't necessarily get to pick the exact person on the Federal Reserve, if he
Yes.
doesn't like what he's doing, he can charge him with crimes. So that's
Smart.
that's
Well,
the
that's
workaround.
what you get in a good, stable government,
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
you can kind of intimidate people like that. That's one of the things. I mean, we keep seeing more as you turn on the news. You're like, wait, do we live in a police state? And I feel like we'll dig into that in maybe another episode. But the idea is the less money and ability to control your finances, the less things you own, the more power your government is going to have over you.
That's
And
100%
I think
true.
you could tell yourself that the more desperate the government gets because they're running out of money, the more they might try and take advantage of you. I hate to say it, because you know what? They're probably not going to be the ones losing.
Right.
It's probably going to be you, as long as they can, eventually they're going to lose. Like, I think, they're holding on into the life raft until the minute, but they're going to be kicking you away. It's going to be like that girl kicking Leonardo DiCaprio off the raft. It's
Yeah.
going to be like that. The American people, you're DiCaprio, right? Handsome,
Right.
young, and hopeful.
Uh-huh.
And Rose, I think it is going to be like, no, you're out.
Yeah.
You're on the
Yeah.
outside.
Kate, the government, Kate Winslet, is gonna
Right,
kick you.
painted as somebody pretty, and you're like, oh, Kate,
Right.
she's a nice girl, but she's like, but I just can't. No, goodbye.
Uh-huh.
There's no room on the raft. You can't even hold a square.
Yeah,
nothing.
and there is enough room. There is enough room on there.
Yeah. There was other driftwood like all around too, like other
Mhm.
wood coming off no. So anyway, that's what we got. But that's the world and how it's shaping up. So I'm just saying, kind of realize that money is not the only answer, and you kind of need to find a way, real products and products that you own, right? Something that the bank can come and take, probably not a good idea. Although the bankruptcy laws that were created to help, I think, business owners and politicians could actually work to your advantage somewhere if you want to manipulate the system. But if you're on some kind of honor code where you feel like you should pay for what you get, like if you had morals and values,
Right.
then you want to own the stuff that you need. That's what I say. But I will say, man.
But if you are running a corporation or a business, having morals is not really healthy for your business.
No, business is not the right career for you. Kevin, that sounds horrible. There's got to be a way. What if you were the perfect businessman like Elon?
Right.
I was waiting for your head to explode when I said that.
Yeah. No, it's cool because then you can just convince the government to tax people and then give you the taxes so you can invest in. Weren't we supposed to be in Mars this year? What happened to that?
Kevin, if you would if you had given more money,
I know. It's my fault for not paying enough taxes.
Greedy. That's what
you can actually. You don't have to just pay the taxes that you owe. You can pay as much as you want. And if I had just paid an extra, $13 billion in taxes last year, we would have been on Mars.
I don't pay attention to that stuff enough to really make a very informed decision, because there's so much behind the scenes. But I will say, I think Elon's pretty cool, and I think he actually found a way to work the system to achieve the goals that he wanted to achieve. But
there's a lot of welfare moms out there that also found a way to work the system.
And that's, I think, they're fair. I just think, however, I choose to take a different moral path and go a different way. But I don't know. I just always wonder, like, am I dumb because I'm not taking advantage of what's available to me? And because when you can see the whole picture, But you don't have to be evil and embrace it. Turns out you can just go do the right thing. And
Yeah,
work
you can.
hard.
You can. You can. And a lot of people do that, and they're called poor people.
Yeah, you know me and my friends, right? All
Yeah.
right. So with that, I would say we really appreciate you guys listening. Like, subscribe, that kind of stuff. It really helps. But put ideas and things you want to hear about in the comments, or send us an email at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.